Let me start with a question that might hit you a little harder than you expected. Have you ever tried to build something before you were ready? I don't mean ambition. I'm not talking about dreams. I'm talking about trying to build a business, a relationship, a reputation, a future without building yourself first, without pouring a foundation underneath your plans, without forging the disciplines and principles that give your success any real chance to stay. You went after the house, but forgot the ground it was supposed to stand on. And maybe you got a few walls up. Maybe it even looked good from the street. But eventually, whether it was stress, pressure, fatigue, inconsistency, or disappointment, something collapsed. And when it didn't just shake what you were building, it shook you. That's the trap of external pursuit without internal strength. It's the hollow house. You decorate the windows, polish the door, and even hang a sign that says success, but underneath, nothing solid. No foundation, just dirt, shifting with every storm. And sooner or later, the storms do come. They always come. Pressure will test what praise hides. Delay will test what momentum once disguised. And if you skip the hard, quiet work of becoming someone worthy of what you're building, your progress becomes fragile. It breaks under weight. Not because it was fake, but because you weren't formed. Let's be honest. Some of you listening right now have been moving fast. Too fast. You've been sprinting from one opportunity to the next, one business to the next, one platform to the next, trying to make something happen. You're not lazy. You're not weak. You're just tired because you've been trying to build something heavy without strengthening the builder. And maybe, deep down, you know it. You know the image has outgrown the substance. You know the applause is louder than the confidence. You know the pressure you're carrying is greater than the preparation you've developed. And it's starting to show up in the cracks, in your attitude, your focus, your health, your relationships, your ability to follow through. That's not failure. That's feedback. And it's telling you one thing. It's time to pause the building and start building you. Because you're not behind, you're unbuilt. And the good news is, you can fix that. But only if you stop chasing outcomes long enough to invest in your own foundation. If you stop trying to look successful and start trying to become someone success can trust. Because here's the truth the world won't tell you. If you gain what you haven't prepared for, it will crush you. And that's not punishment, that's mercy. Life is giving you a chance to catch up with yourself. So let me tell you how this works. Before you build the business, you build the character. Before you scale the mission, you scale the habits. Before you post the goals, you post the disciplines. And if you don't, then every win becomes a weight. Every opportunity becomes a threat. Because now you have to maintain what you didn't build strong enough to support. That's why you see people who look like they're winning on the outside but are unraveling on the inside. They skip the first project, themselves. Don't make that mistake. Don't envy the man who rose quickly. Envy the one who grew deeply. Don't admire the person who built something loud. Admire the one who built something lasting. Because building yourself will never trend. No one claps for it. No one posts it. It's quiet, slow, deliberate work. But it's the only work that makes everything else possible. It's the only work that gives you the strength to build something that won't collapse. So, if you're tired, if you're discouraged, if you've been trying to force fruit without roots, let this be your permission. Stop the sprint. Step back. Begin again. With you. Because once you build yourself, you can build anything. But until you do, nothing will hold. Let's talk about drift. Not as an idea, not as a theory, but as a real, daily experience that's happening to more people than ever, and maybe, if you're honest, to you. Drift is subtle. It doesn't knock on your door and announce its arrival. It doesn't show up with red flags. Drift is quiet. It doesn't feel like failure, it feels like delay. It doesn't feel like quitting, it feels like, I'll get to it tomorrow. Drift doesn't destroy your life in one loud moment. It erodes it, one unnoticed day at a time. It's when you're moving, but not arriving. Busy, but not building. Active, but not aligned. You know what drift looks like? It looks like waking up with good intentions and ending the day with nothing meaningful done. It looks like a to-do list full of small things that don't really matter, while the important things get pushed off again. It looks like hours lost in reaction, checking your phone, jumping from task to task, handling everybody else's urgency while your own priorities collect dust. And the worst part? You feel exhausted at the end of the day, even though you didn't do what actually needed to be done. That's the emotional tax of drift. You work all day and still feel behind. You run fast and feel like you're standing still. Drift shows up in your thoughts too. The quiet nagging of, I should be further along by now. The guilt of knowing you're capable of more, but not living it. The frustration of repeating the same cycle. Start strong on Monday, lose momentum by Wednesday, feel disappointed by Friday. Then promise yourself you'll start fresh next week. Drift is not a lack of ambition. It's a misalignment of attention. It's when you trade discipline for distraction and don't even notice the transaction until weeks have passed. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you're on a ship, no compass, no map, no course, just the open sea. You're not lazy. You're rowing. You're sweating. You're putting in the hours. But every day you wake up and realize you've just gone in circles. No progress, no destination, just motion. That's drift. And it's dangerous not because you're doing nothing, but because you think you're doing something. It tricks you into believing you're building when you're really burning time. It tells you you're busy, but hides the truth. You're busy avoiding what matters. And here's where it gets serious. Drift doesn't just steal your days. It steals your identity. It slowly separates you from who you said you wanted to be. It weakens your self-trust. You stop believing yourself when you make commitments. You say, I'm going to change, but you've broken that promise too many times. So your own words carry less weight. And eventually, you stop setting big goals. Not because you don't care, but because you're tired of disappointing yourself. That's what drift does. It doesn't take your future all at once. It just makes you slowly settle for less than you're capable of. So how do you know you're drifting? Here are a few signs. You're reactive more than intentional. You start the day with your phone instead of your mind. You end the day without a clear win. Your weeks blend together. You're always planning but rarely executing. You have more ideas than results. You consume more than you create. You're often busy but rarely proud. If any of that sounds familiar, it's not a moral failure. It's just drift. And drift, thank God, is reversible, but only when it's named. Because you cannot correct what you will not confront. You can't build anything strong, consistent, or lasting while you're drifting. And you can't escape it by just working harder. You escape it by becoming deliberate, by anchoring your day in non-negotiable disciplines, by saying no to the trivial so you can say yes to what actually moves you forward. Because until you do, you'll keep repeating the same month over and over and calling it a year. And I don't want that for you. You're not here to repeat. You're here to build. But before you build anything out there, you must stop the drift in here. Inside the mind, inside the calendar, inside the soul. And it starts with a decision, not a dramatic one, just a quiet, firm one. No more drift. Not because you're scared, but because you're ready. You're ready to trade frantic movement for focused direction. You're ready to build not just busy your life. You're ready to stop running in circles and start walking in purpose. Because once you anchor your life in discipline, drift has no power over you. It only thrives in the lives of the unanchored. And you weren't made to float, you were made to build. Let's get brutally honest about one of the most deceptive traps of modern life. Doing everything except the thing that matters most. It's subtle. It's seductive. It even feels responsible. But it's the fastest way to waste your life while pretending to manage it. I call it trading time for tasks. And I don't mean the meaningful tasks, the ones aligned with your values, your goals, your future. I mean the tasks that scream the loudest, but matter the least. The ones that fill your hours, but starve your impact. The ones that make you feel productive, but leave you waking up months later asking, why am I still in the same place? And here's the kicker, it's not that you're doing nothing. You're doing a lot. You're answering emails, returning messages, responding to notifications, checking on things, shuffling papers, rearranging files, researching options, tweaking systems. All of it has a whiff of purpose. It feels like work, but it's surface-level maintenance, not foundational movement. You're mistaking motion for progress. You're mistaking effort for impact. And that trade your limited, precious time for a never-ending to-do list of low-return activity that's a trade you can't afford to keep making. Let me paint the picture. You have a cracked jar, and every morning you pour yourself into it, your focus, your time, your intention. But by mid-afternoon, you're dry. Not because you didn't pour enough, but because the jar itself couldn't hold what you gave it. You didn't patch the cracks. You didn't identify the priorities. You didn't distinguish between what feels urgent and what actually moves the needle. And so by nightfall, you're wondering why you're drained and discouraged. You worked all day, but you didn't build anything. You responded, but you didn't lead. Here's the hard truth. You don't have a time problem. You have a priority problem. And until you fix that, you will always feel like you're running out of time, even though you're filling every minute. The problem isn't the hours in your day, it's the decisions you make inside those hours. And let me say this gently but clearly. If you're too busy to become the person your goals require, then you're too busy doing the wrong things. Because the most powerful work you will ever do is the work that builds you. Your mindset, your habits, your philosophy, your discipline. Everything else depends on that. So how do you stop trading time for tasks? You get clear, painfully clear. You audit your life with ruthless honesty. You look at your calendar, your daily habits, your input sources, your energy leaks. You start asking better questions. Is this helping me become stronger, sharper, more focused? Is this building a skill, a system, a future, or just checking a box? You stop glorifying busyness and start honoring results. And you start treating time as a sacred asset, not something to manage, but something to master. Because at the end of the day, your legacy will not be measured by how many things you crossed off a list. It will be measured by what you built that actually lasted. And what lasts is never accidental. It's always the result of prioritized attention and disciplined effort. That means you have to choose. You have to protect the hours that matter most. You have to say no to 1,000 little things so you can say yes to the one big thing that builds your future. And here's the beautiful shift. Once you stop trading time for tasks and start investing it in alignment, your entire life begins to change. Your confidence grows, your clarity sharpens, your momentum returns. Because now you're not just managing time, you're multiplying it. You're not just staying busy, you're staying on mission. And that's what separates people who drift from people who build. One lets time use them. The other uses time to become. Now let's go deeper, not into your schedule, but into your sense of self. Because there's a more dangerous trade-off than wasting time. It's when you begin to trade your identity for applause. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small, seemingly harmless compromises. A little adjustment here to sound more likable. A little silence there to avoid offense. A curated image instead of an honest one. A highlight reel for public praise, while the real you goes unseen and, worse, unbuilt. And soon, without meaning to, you've become more committed to looking impressive than to being dependable. And here's what happens when you chase applause before character. You begin to attach your worth to recognition rather than reputation. You build a brand when what you really need is a backbone. You chase visibility when what you actually lack is credibility. You speak louder instead of thinking deeper. And in all the noise, you forget what matters most, truth. Because applause is a moving target. It shifts with trends. It bends with opinion. It can lift you today and abandon you tomorrow. But who you are when no one's clapping, that's the part of you that has to be built first. Let me say something you might not hear often in today's world. You are not called to be impressive. You are called to be true. True to your values, true to your word. True to the inner standards that hold when the pressure hits. You don't have to win the crowd. You have to win your own conscience. Because the applause of the world means nothing if it's built on the abandonment of your integrity. You can have 1,000 fans and still feel empty. You can have 1,000,000 followers and still feel fake. You can have the image of success and still feel like a stranger to your own soul. This is where the real rebuilding begins, not with strategy, but with sobriety. A clear, sober look at the gap between the image you project and the identity you possess. Because until those two match, you will always feel off-center. You'll feel tension in your work. You'll feel doubt in your decisions. You'll feel fear when the spotlight turns on, not because you're unworthy, but because you know you've skipped the steps of personal development that earn the right to lead, speak, build, and carry the weight of what you've been given. You don't need a platform before you have a philosophy. You don't need likes before you have laws, internal laws that govern how you show up, how you act, how you think, and how you treat people when no one's watching. Because those internal laws, those quiet commitments are the only thing that can carry you through seasons of pressure, criticism, misunderstanding, and delay. Image can't carry you. Approval can't carry you. Only identity forged in truth can carry you. And let's not forget the theological weight here. You were not created for popularity. You were created for purpose. And purpose isn't always public. Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's quiet obedience behind closed doors. Sometimes it's being faithful when the crowd disappears. But in those moments when you're unseen and still showing up, you are building something. Applause can't match. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't just perform in public, but stands strong in private. That's where your power lives. That's where your leadership begins. That's where your legacy starts, not with how loud you shouted, but with how firmly you stood. So let me give you this challenge. Before you try to be seen, make sure you are solid. Before you build a name, build a nature. Before you gather followers, become someone worth following. Because if you get applause before you're ready, it won't elevate you. It will expose you. But if you do the quiet, difficult, deliberate work of building yourself first, if you choose to be true before you try to be impressive, then when the applause comes, you won't need it. It will simply echo what's already real. Don't become known before you become true. Because once you've built that truth, applause will come. And if it doesn't, it won't matter. You'll already know who you are. Now, we've seen the drift, the distractions, the dangerous trade-offs, trading time for tasks, identity for applause. But what's the antidote? What's the anchor that stops drift, rebuilds character, and puts your life back on a foundation strong enough to support what you're meant to build? It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not timing. It's not even passion. The real answer is simple, unglamorous, and non-negotiable. Daily discipline. Because while drift is passive erosion, discipline is conscious construction. It's the decision to stop floating and start building, not in theory, not when it feels good, but every single day. Discipline doesn't shout. It doesn't post about itself. It doesn't need applause. It simply shows up. It lays the next brick. It mixes the mortar of consistency and alignment. It builds a life brick by brick, not fast, not loud, but strong. That's the metaphor I want you to carry with you, brick by brick. One aligned choice at a time, one small promise kept, one quiet hour invested in who you're becoming. That's how you rebuild your foundation. That's how you reclaim your self-respect. That's how you earn the right to build anything outside, by building strength and structure inside. And here's what daily discipline really is. It's saying yes to your future self and no to your present excuses. It's the quiet agreement between who you are and who you must become. It's not about never missing. It's about refusing to quit. It's about showing up after the setback, brushing off the dust, and laying the next brick anyway. Because discipline isn't about the perfect streak, it's about the unbreakable direction. And if you keep moving in that direction, day after day, year after year, you will become someone no amount of pressure can shake. Let me reframe something for you. You're not behind. You're unbuilt. And that's good news, because it means you don't have to chase, beg, or rush. You don't have to perform. You just have to start building. One discipline at a time. Not flashy ones, fundamental ones. The kind that align you with your own values. Because success, as I've said for years, is not something you pursue. It's something you attract by the person you become. That means the results you want: better finances, stronger health, deeper relationships, meaningful work, don't come from a louder effort. They come from a truer version of you. One who is rooted, aligned, consistent. One who doesn't just have a plan, but lives in a pattern. One who builds their day around principles, not pressure. One who knows that the difference between a wasted year and a transformational year is simply daily discipline, repeated with intention. And let's be clear, discipline is not punishment. It's preparation. It's not restriction, it's release. It frees you from the chaos of inconsistency. It frees you from regret. It frees you from the constant identity crisis of being one person in your mind and another in your actions. It brings you back into alignment. And when you're aligned, when your actions match your beliefs, you begin to walk with strength. Quiet strength. Grounded strength. Not the kind that needs to prove itself, but the kind that moves mountains over time. So here's what I want you to remember. Drift is the default. Discipline is the decision. Drift feels easy but leaves you empty. Discipline feels slow but makes you strong. Drift erodes your confidence. Discipline builds it. Drift says, maybe someday. Discipline says, start today. And if you start today, just today, you begin to break the pattern. You begin to reverse the erosion. You begin to become someone you trust again. And from that trust, everything else becomes possible. Because once you build discipline, you can build a life. And once you've built a life on that, there's nothing you can't carry. Not pressure, not delay, not doubt, not even failure, because you're no longer floating. You're forged. Now I want you to look ahead, not with fantasy, but with clarity. I want you to see what's possible when you make the choice, not just to start, but to stay. Because discipline doesn't just get you through the day, it builds a future you can stand on. One that feels earned. One that's not propped up by appearances or held together by pressure, but one that's held together by the kind of character that doesn't crack under weight. That's the future discipline buys. Not just results. Respect. Not just success. Stability. Not just applause. Alignment. Imagine this with me. Imagine you gave yourself 1 full year, not of perfection, not of speed, not of applause, but of focused, personal discipline. 1 year of rising on time. 1 year of reading instead of scrolling. 1 year of writing your goals instead of rehearsing your regrets. 1 year of following through instead of faking it. 1 year of managing your emotions instead of being managed by them. 1 year of finishing what you start. You tell me, what would that year buy you? And the answer is simple. Everything. Confidence. Clarity. Freedom. Momentum. Self-respect. Not because someone handed it to you, but because you built it. Discipline is the seed, but the harvest it produces touches every part of your life. Your relationships, they start to stabilize because you become someone who doesn't overpromise and underdeliver. Your finances, they start to recover because discipline gives you the consistency to earn more and the wisdom to manage it. Your physical health, it turns from a source of shame into a source of strength because discipline shows up in what you eat, how you move, when you rest. Your emotional world, it steadies because discipline trains your mind to respond instead of react. Every part of your life begins to align, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. And that strength is transferable. That's what people miss. When you build yourself, everyone around you benefits. Your kids, your coworkers, your clients, your community. Because discipline sharpens every tool you carry. It makes you sharper in conversations, steadier in conflict, clearer in leadership, more trustworthy in pressure. Discipline is what separates people who can lead from people who should. It's the unseen preparation that earns public influence. And let me tell you, there's no substitute for it. You can't shortcut it. You can't delegate it. You can't fake it. You either build it or you collapse under the weight of what you tried to carry too soon. You see, the world often celebrates the finish line. But what I've always said is this. It's what you do daily that determines whether you ever even get to run the race. You don't get paid for potential. You get paid for value. And your value increases every time you deepen your discipline. Because discipline is the tool that sharpens you. You become more alert, more reliable, more persuasive, more credible. You become the kind of person others trust. And when that happens, doors open. Not because you knocked harder, but because you became the kind of person people want to open doors for. Now here's the warning. You cannot outsource who you're becoming. You can't hire someone to do your discipline. You can't automate character. You can't download consistency. This is work that no one sees but everyone feels. You have to do it. You have to show up. You have to stay long after the mood has left. And when you do, when you keep going, when you keep building, one day you'll look around and realize you've built a future worth living in. Not because it was easy, but because it was earned. So I'll say it again. 1 year of disciplined effort will change everything. Not because the world bends to you, but because you bent yourself to truth. And once you've done that, once you've learned how to lead you, there's no limit to what you can build next. Because you're no longer carrying the dream with trembling hands, you're carrying it with earned strength. And that's the future that lasts. Let's begin where every day begins with the morning. Because how you start your day isn't just about routine, it's about reign. Either you take control of the morning, or the morning takes control of you. And if the first thing you do is reach for your phone, scroll through someone else's life, absorb someone else's agenda, or react to someone else's urgency, then you've already surrendered. You've already given away the keys to your direction. That's why I say, the day doesn't give you direction, you give it direction. And if you don't, then by 0 a.m., you're already behind, not in your tasks, but in your philosophy. Morning ownership is the first battle, and it sets the tone for every other decision you make. It's not about waking up at 4 a.m. like some badge of honor. It's about waking up on purpose. It's about starting with intention, not reaction. That means you rise with clarity, You move your body. You feed your mind. You check in with your goals, your values, your plans, not out of obligation, but because that anchoring process reminds you who you are and what you're building. Without it, the drift begins before your feet even hit the floor. Think of it like this. Your mind is fertile soil, and every morning, something gets planted. If it's distraction, fear, comparison, or noise, don't be surprised when your life grows weeds. But if it's truth, vision, alignment, and movement, then the harvest that follows will look and feel entirely different. So you've got to choose what gets planted. That's the power of morning discipline. It doesn't have to be complicated, just consistent. You wake up, you move, you breathe, you read, you write. You set your internal compass before the external world starts pulling at you. And when it does, you're already centered. You're already clear. You're already anchored. Now let me give you something practical. I call it the 4-part morning: simple, structured, and repeatable. First, wake with purpose. No more snoozing on your potential. No more delaying the discipline. When the alarm goes off, it's not a test of comfort. It's a test of commitment. Second, read something that builds you. It could be scripture, philosophy, something from a mentor, something that reminds you of who you want to become. Third, move your body. Something to awaken your energy and reconnect your mind and body. Fourth, reflect. Write something, a goal, a lesson, a gratitude, a reminder, something that brings order to your thinking and direction to your day. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be deliberate, because your mornings are sacred ground. They're not the leftovers of yesterday's exhaustion. They're the starting point of who you're becoming. And once you start treating them that way, once you begin your day with ownership instead of reaction, you'll notice something shift. You'll feel stronger before anything hard happens. You'll feel clearer before any decisions arrive. You'll walk into your work, your family, your habits, not from a place of chaos, but from a place of leadership. And that's what we're really talking about: self-leadership. If you can't lead yourself in the first hour of the day, don't expect to lead anyone else with strength. Don't expect to build something that lasts when your morning foundation is unstable. This is where the builder is built, quietly, repetitively, in the morning. Before the world starts talking, you speak first. You declare what matters. You take control. You build yourself so you can build everything else. Now let's talk about what you feed your mind. Because just like your body responds to what you eat, your mind responds to what you consume, what you listen to, what you read, what you rehearse. And make no mistake, you are consuming something every day, whether intentionally or by default, whether wisdom or noise. And whatever it is, it's shaping you, slowly, steadily, silently. That's why I say you've got to stand guard at the door of your mind, not casually, vigilantly, because every piece of information, every voice, every headline, every comment, it's either building your strength or feeding your fear. You wouldn't put garbage in your body and expect to perform at your best. So why do we let garbage into our minds and expect to stay focused, courageous, and clear? You see, mental nutrition isn't just about being informed. It's about being formed. Formed by truth, formed by principle, formed by ideas that lift, stretch, and sharpen you, not shrink and scatter you. And here's the test. Does what you're listening to build you or blur you? Does it anchor your values or agitate your emotions? Because your future is being formed by what you feed on today. If you don't choose your input will choose you, and you may not like what it makes you become. Mental discipline starts with subtraction. You cut the noise before you add the wisdom. You unsubscribe from outrage. You mute confusion. You step out of the algorithm. You stop letting the digital world tell you what matters more than the real one. And once you've made space, you replace the noise with nourishment. You feed your mind like a builder feeds his muscles, consistently, strategically, intentionally. Every day, you pour in what aligns with your future. Not once in a while. Every day. Because repetition is what forms belief, and belief forms behavior. So what should you feed your mind? Start with voices that reinforce discipline. People who've built something from principle. Wisdom that's been tested, not just tweeted. Truth that's older than trends. The kind of thinking that expands you rather than entertains you. And remember, this isn't about volume. It's about value. 10 minutes of timeless wisdom in the morning will do more for your future than 10 hours of outrage and opinions. You don't need to binge. You need to build. One page, one lesson, one new idea that turns the lights back on in your thinking. Now, here's a practical challenge. Replace just one scroll session a day with intentional learning. That's it. Replace one episode, one doom scroll, one click hole with something that grows you. Listen to an audio program while driving. Read 10 pages instead of checking the news. Replay the principle you're trying to live out. Because your life is not limited by what you know. It's limited by how often you remind yourself of what you already know. That's what daily mental nutrition does. It keeps truth fresh, relevant, actionable. It sharpens the edges of your awareness so you don't forget who you said you'd become. And here's the deeper truth. You can't build a powerful life with a passive mind. The mind is the engine of the builder. It's what sees the vision, sets the tone, makes the decisions, and creates the momentum. And if that engine is filled with fear, confusion, ego, or entertainment, don't be surprised when your life starts to wobble. If you want more focus, more courage, more clarity, don't beg for it. Feed it. And if you feed it long enough, with the right sources, consistently and deliberately, something incredible happens. Your thinking elevates. Your standards rise. Your awareness sharpens. And you become the kind of person who doesn't just consume great ideas, but lives them. So remember this. What you feed your mind today becomes the filter through which you interpret tomorrow. Feed it like your future depends on it, because it does. There's a difference between having a goal and having a written vision. One is an idea, a hope, a vague direction, something floating in the back of your mind. The other is a commitment, a contract with yourself, a clear, visible, daily reminder of what matters most. Because your life moves in the direction of your dominant thoughts. And your dominant thoughts are shaped by what you write down and review again and again and again. That's why I say, if it's not written, it's not real. If it's not in front of you, it's probably fading behind you. And if you don't give your vision words, the world will give you distraction. Written vision is the discipline of alignment. It's not about motivation. It's about memory. Because the truth is, we don't forget our dreams because they're weak. We forget them because we stop repeating them. And repetition, as I've said for years, is the mother of skill, but it's also the father of direction. That means if you want to stay aligned, you can't just feel your vision. You have to write it repeatedly, daily, not to impress anyone, not to broadcast to the world, but to remind you of who you're choosing to become. You see, we live in a world full of input, constant noise, ideas, content, reaction. And in the midst of all that, you can begin to lose yourself. You can start chasing someone else's success. You can start comparing your journey to their highlight reel. But when you return to your written vision, you re-anchor. You come back to you. You remember why you started. You remember what you value. You reconnect with the builder inside who's not here to drift, to follow, to impress, but to build something real. And that reminder that repetition of vision is what keeps your days from being wasted. So what does this look like? It looks like grabbing a journal, a planner, a notepad, and writing every day your goals, your values, your disciplines, your non-negotiables. It looks like rewriting your 5-year vision often enough that it becomes etched in your thinking. It looks like writing phrases that stir you, focus you, steady you. Because if your direction isn't clear, your decisions will always be scattered. And written vision is what creates that clarity not once in January, but every day, day after day, line by line, brick by brick. And don't make the mistake of thinking this is fluff. This is architecture. This is how you build alignment between your mind and your actions. This is how you bridge the gap between knowing and doing. You don't need more content, you need more reminders. You need to rehearse your principles until they become second nature. And the only way to rehearse them is to write them again and again. Because every time you write a vision, you reinforce identity. You remind yourself, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. And that reminder is what keeps you moving when motivation disappears. Written vision builds mental clarity. It silences the noise. It keeps you from waking up and letting the world tell you what your day should be. You already know. You wrote it. You've seen it. You've committed to it. And that kind of clarity, daily clarity, is rare. It's powerful. It gives you the edge. Because most people drift from week to week, always busy, rarely aligned. But not you, not anymore. Not once you make writing your vision a daily discipline. Not once you start building your direction with ink instead of emotion. So if you're serious about building yourself, if you're tired of starting over, tired of forgetting what matters, tired of feeling scattered, then start writing every morning, every week, every time you feel lost. Don't just think it, write it. Because written vision doesn't just remind you where you're going. It tells the truth about whether your current behavior is actually taking you there. And if it's not, then you have the power to course correct. That's the gift of discipline. That's the power of putting pen to paper. Not just to dream, but to decide. You can't build anything meaningful with a body that's falling apart, not because you're weak, but because you're disconnected. Your body is not separate from your ambition. It's not separate from your discipline. It's not separate from your purpose. It is the engine of everything you do. The carrier of your mind, your spirit, your work, your voice, your impact. And if you neglect it, if you live out of rhythm with rest, nutrition, movement, and strength, you'll eventually find that no matter how clear your vision, you can't carry it. Because physical integrity isn't about appearance. It's about alignment. It's about living in a body that agrees with your goals. Let me make this plain. Your energy is fuel. And when your fuel is low, your habits collapse. You lose focus. You lose patience. You lose resilience. Your best ideas go unused because your mind's too foggy to write them down. Your principles get traded for cravings. Your momentum dies halfway through the day, not because your mission is wrong, but because your body isn't prepared to support it. That's why physical discipline is not a side project. It's a core pillar. It's the foundation of presence, stamina, clarity, and self-respect. It reminds you every single day that you are responsible for the vessel you've been given. So what does physical integrity look like? It looks like movement daily, deliberate movement. You don't have to run marathons. You don't have to compete, but you do have to move. You stretch, you walk, you train, not for aesthetics, but for strength, focus, endurance. Because when you train the body, you are teaching yourself, I do hard things. I show up. I stay strong under resistance. And that principle carries over into every other area of your life. Every rep, every step, every drop of sweat is a declaration. I take care of what carries me. It also looks like rest, real rest. Not scrolling, not escaping, but recovery. Because hustle without recovery leads to burnout. And you weren't built to burn out. You were built to build, and builders rest on purpose. They don't collapse. They refuel. They sleep with intention. They guard their energy like it matters because it does. Because the body isn't something you squeeze for performance. It's something you steward. It's something you protect because it's where your whole life lives. And then there's nutrition. I'm not here to give you a diet. I'm here to give you a principle. Eat for clarity. Eat for energy. Eat for discipline. Ask yourself, is this helping me build? Not just your body, but your life. Because food is either feeding your focus or feeding your fatigue. And when you start choosing what strengthens you over what comforts you, you are building a builder. You're becoming someone who doesn't chase pleasure but chooses purpose. And that single shift, even in something as small as a meal, reverberates through your entire philosophy. So what are we really talking about here? We're talking about respect. Respect for the body that's carried you this far. Respect for the gift of breath, movement, life. You don't have to love the way you look. You don't have to chase perfection. You just have to care. You have to honor the principle. I cannot build anything lasting while neglecting the tool I build with. Because your discipline will always be limited by your energy. And your energy will always be the echo of your habits. How you sleep, how you eat, how you move, how you breathe. And here's the good news. This doesn't require hours. It requires ownership. 10 minutes of movement. A walk instead of a nap. Water instead of soda. A full night of sleep instead of a midnight scroll. These aren't just health decisions, they're identity declarations. You're saying, I'm the kind of person who shows up for my future, even when no one sees it. And that one decision, repeated daily, changes the shape of your life. Not just your body, but your being. So don't wait until it's urgent. Don't wait until the doctor says so. Don't wait until your energy collapses. Start now. Start where you are. Honor the body. Feed the engine. Move the system. Because the stronger your body, the clearer your mind. The clearer your mind, the firmer your habits. And the firmer your habits, the bigger your future. There's a kind of silent power in completion. Not in doing 100 things halfway. Not in juggling a dozen open loops and calling it productivity. I'm talking about finishing. One thing. Done. Closed. Locked in. That kind of integrity to begin and complete something deliberately is one of the rarest and most essential disciplines you can build. Because in a world addicted to starting, to dabbling, to announcing, to pivoting, the people who finish stand apart. The people who can look at a task and say, that's done. Those are the people who create momentum, who rebuild confidence, who forge trust, not just with others, but with themselves. You see, when you finish something, no matter how small you are, voting for your future, you are saying, I'm the kind of person who follows through. And that vote stacks every day. You don't need 10 completions. You need one. Just one deliberate act of doneness. It could be a workout, a journal entry, a call, a plan, a chapter, a clean space. A finished project that you've been avoiding. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be complete. Because completion creates clarity. Completion breaks drift. Completion is closure. And closure is the oxygen of progress. Let me show you how most people live. They float through their day with 20 browser tabs open in their mind. Conversations unfinished. Plans unexecuted. Ideas half-written. Priorities rearranged by emotion. And they wonder why they feel overwhelmed. It's not the size of the tasks. It's the weight of the incompletions. All those loose ends clutter your mind. All that mental residue steals your focus. That's why the discipline of finishing one thing, just one, is so powerful. It simplifies. It solidifies. It gives you something real to stand on. Something you can point to at the end of the day and say, that moved the mission forward. This is more than time management. This is identity management. Because your belief in yourself is directly tied to your ability to follow through. You don't need motivational speeches. You need evidence. Evidence that your words mean something. Evidence that your commitments aren't just emotional reactions, but structural realities. And you get that evidence through completion. One win a day, one finished promise. One brick placed, not just carried. Now let's make this practical. Each morning, ask yourself, what's the one thing I will finish today? Not start, not think about. Finish. Something that matters. Something that builds. Something that makes your tomorrow stronger. And at the end of the day, whether it took 10 minutes or 2 hours, whether it was glamorous or quiet, you finish it. And you don't just cross it off a list, you own it. You let that win build into your bones. And the next day, you do it again. Over time, you'll notice something changing. You'll feel lighter, not because life got easier, but because your mind isn't carrying the weight of unmade decisions. You'll feel stronger, not because you did more, but because you completed what mattered. And people will feel it. They'll sense the groundedness in your presence, the clarity in your speech, the integrity in your leadership, because you're not scattered. You're stacked with completions, not chaos. And those stacks of finished work are what elevate you over time, not all at once, but day by day, quietly, deliberately, powerfully. So start today. Choose one thing, finish it, and let that simple act become your standard. Because when you finish what you start, you become someone your future can trust. Let's end where all rebuilding begins, with the truth. Not hype, not comfort, truth. And here it is. You're not late. You're not behind. You're not disqualified. You're responsible. That's the truth. And while the world might try to convince you that you've missed your moment, that you're too old, too stuck, too far gone, none of that is true. What's true is this. Now is your moment. Not tomorrow, not next year. Now, this breath, this day, this chapter. The builder is not waiting for perfect timing. The builder is waiting for permission, and that permission comes from you. You're not here to repeat another year. You're here to rebuild. And rebuilding doesn't start with a master plan. It starts with a mirror. You look in it. You face it. You stop blaming, stop waiting, stop wishing. You say, this is my life. These are my choices. And I'm going to build the kind of person I can be proud of. Because no one's coming to do it for you. No one can. They can support you, encourage you, challenge you, but they can't build you. That's your job. That's your assignment. That's your honor. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop measuring how far you are from the finish line. I want you to stop comparing your progress to someone else's highlight reel. I want you to stop looking at your age, your setbacks, your false starts, and use them for what they really are. Material. That's right. Material. Every mistake, every delay, every disappointment, it's not trash. It's timber. It's brick. It's the stuff that makes your next build stronger. Because when you've been through the fire, when you've felt the collapse, when you've lived through drift, you're not weaker, you're wiser. And wisdom, when paired with discipline, becomes unstoppable. You see, the structure you're building now, the one called you, it matters more than anything you'll ever build externally. Your business will rise and fall with your discipline. Your marriage will rise and fall with your consistency. Your leadership will rise and fall with your internal strength. That's why we don't start with the strategy. We start with the stewardship. The stewardship of your habits, your thoughts, your values, your health, your time. Because those are the materials that shape your entire life. And once you build you, everything else gets built with more integrity. So if you're feeling the weight of delay, let me lift it. You're not late. You're just now ready to own it. And ownership is better than being early. Ownership is better than getting lucky. Because once you take full responsibility, you no longer need the world to hand you anything. You don't need applause. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to be rescued. You've already picked up the tools. You've already stepped into the frame. You've already said, this is my life, and I'm going to build it. That's what this whole message has been about. Not motivation, but maturity. The kind of maturity that says, I'm done being casual with my time. I'm done treating discipline like an option. I'm done outsourcing my future to emotions, distractions, or delay. I build me. And once I've built me, I can build anything. Because now you understand it's not about being the loudest. It's about being aligned. It's not about proving yourself. It's about preparing yourself. And the builder who is prepared doesn't need to chase opportunity. He attracts it. He's not lucky, he's ready. So from this day forward, you don't chase, you construct. You don't compare, you clarify. You don't float, you forge. And every day through the fog, through the noise, through the pressure, you do the work. Quietly, faithfully, brick by brick. Because that's how you build a self you don't have to escape from. That's how you build a future that doesn't collapse. That's how you build a life that lasts not with force, but with foundation. You're not unworthy. You're underdeveloped. So build yourself. Become someone you trust. Someone others can follow. Someone your future can rest on. And once you've built that, once the structure inside you is stronger than the storm outside, then and only then, you can build anything.